Hello everyone and welcome back to Southern Malt. I hope you guys are doing very well. If you do enjoy the content, please consider dropping that like and subscribe. By the way, I'll be traveling over the weekend, spending some time with the family. So that's why I'm recording so many days in a row. So I'll be traveling tomorrow and back on Sunday. So tomorrow I won't record. Saturday I won't record. Maybe Sunday evening, we'll see. Depends if something major really happens. But let's take it from there. So the markets remain very unstable. That is to be expected. I think I've mentioned this yesterday, but I think it's important to say it again. The markets have very thin liquidity. Like you have these pocket hairs of liquidity in which you go up 50 handles on the S&P within like 2 minutes, because basically there's no orders in between. In environments like this, I've said this before and I'll say it again, I rather sit on my hands. If I do see something outrageously sold off in cryptos that I like, for example, that's where I try to pick up a few coins that I like, if I do see the opportunity presenting itself. Not always happens, but one tries. But besides that, no leverage, nothing with leverage, and no crazy amounts as well, because it's so easy to get annihilated. It's not really a game that I'm very keen to play. Now, there's, once again, as I predicted yesterday about the narratives, half the people say that Trump is a genius and now the massive deals are going to happen. The other half says he caved. Look at the bond market to selling off, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. Look at the dollar, everything is a disaster, blah, blah, blah. My answer remains the same. It remains to be seen. If he signs very good deals, and apparently there's a deal that is very close to be announced, it would be nice to be with a country, with a relevant country, meaning even if it's with Israel is very close to the US, so it doesn't really have that impact. But if it's a country like, Vietnam is already very important. Like people joke around with Vietnam. A lot of stuff comes from Vietnam nowadays to avoid the supply chain coming from China. If it's a country, at least in that order, I think it will have a good impact. It's mostly, it should be relevant countries, but even if, for example, things like El Salvador, I think they're going to do a deal. The UAE, Saudi, I think they're going to do deals. El Salvador, I think they will do deals. So we're really talking about countries like Vietnam, Thailand, but less than Vietnam, Japan, South Korea, European Union, UK, Australia, Canada, Mexico, blah. So something like really more robust would be nice to see. But even the first interaction, I think, would already be quite positive, as long as a country with some recognition. Canada has announced that they're very willing to drop all the tariffs if the US does the same. European Union wants a trade deal. Vietnam has been now in Washington. They also want a trade deal. And trade negotiations already started. So I do expect some fireworks in the next couple of weeks to see really how we are moving. And then we can judge if the trade agreements. So for example, what is the status quo? Big barriers for American products, big tariffs for American products, very little commitment of investment for the majority of the countries in the US, and currency controls, etc., that basically you kind of artificially devalue your currency so you can export more. Okay, if the deal solves, if not all of these things, but part of these things, great. Then the US was in a worse position, and now it's in a better position. Okay, that's a success. With how many countries will they do this? If it's one country, it's not really impressive. If it's with a lot of countries, Now it's quite impressive. So again, for the people who are on one side or the other, that's like me saying, oh, this game is finished because the first two quarters are done. Like I'm watching an NFL match. Let's say the game is 0-0 at halftime. It's going to end up tied because the game is, or it's like 1-0 or 0-1, whatever. I know it's not possible, by the way. It has to be 0-2 minimum, but you get my point. Think about soccer or whatever. It's like getting to halftime and say, yeah, this game is finished. Nothing to see here. Let's go away. I mean, no, you have to watch the rest of the match. I mean, then at the end, okay, this was the winner, this was the loser. That's it. And we move on. But you cannot do it right now. It's important. But once again, I already knew this was going to happen. Peter Schiff is actually quite terrible to read, which is, he almost seems like he wants China to win this, which is very bizarre to me. But I mean, that's up for him. CPI came out at 2.4%. We talked about it yesterday. That I said I was expecting 2.4 to 2.5%. Is it because I'm a genius? No, it's because Trueflation, so the website trueflation.com was showing inflation at 2.4 around a month and a half ago, and there's this lag into the CPI. Currently, that Trueflation is showing CPI in the US at 1.3%. So I get the feeling that by June or something, inflation will be really, really low in the US. And then hopefully Powell can stop being a politician for some reason and actually start cutting rates. Why am I calling him a politician? Very simple. If you look at the data back in September 2024, if you look, so he's supposed to have a dual mandate, right? Employment and inflation. I invite you to go check the data of unemployment in September 2024 and how much was the PCE and CPI and core CPI. And then do the same for October 2024, where he cut another 25 basis points. Unemployment was similar to now, and inflation was substantially worse. So why did he cut 75 basis points in 2 months? And why is he not cutting now? Maybe because there was an election in November. So I don't mind he did it. I mind the pretense to not be politically affiliated. That part is dishonest because it's insulting to my intelligence, and that part makes me angry. I don't like that part. So if he just comes out, I much rather have Kamala, not this guy, fine, I can respect that. But don't pretend to be non-political and then you do something like that. Now, CPI came better than expected. Why? All these economists were saying CPI is going to explode because everyone is stockpiling in March. Remember this narrative? Now died down, of course. Everybody was stockpiling in March to prevent for the tariffs, blah, 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 and inflation is going to explode. And I was saying that seems quite the statement, taking into account that all the commodities are coming down, crashing down everywhere. I mean, gas costs were at 4-year lows, oil prices were dumping, copper, silver, lumber, whatever, everything was dumping. I said, are you so sure that we're going to have like this massive inflation? I'm not so sure about it. So, I mean, once again, economists, I was very confident to be bullish to a certain degree, because if all the economists plus Jim Cramer plus Peter Schiff are here on this side, I'm very glad to take this side over here. No problem. So, happy to do so. Somebody asked me about the overcapacity problem of China. Go to cnbc.com today. CPI, negative 0.1%. But that's not the real story. PPI, Producer Price Index, down for the 19th consecutive month, negative 2.5%. That will explode if they lose the US. It's really, instead of negative 2.5, it's going to go to negative 5. basically producing stuff for no one. That's what it means. And they're gonna dump it in Europe. Why would Europe accept it? Basically, to nuke its own industries. Yeah, right. Sure. This was also one of the problems with the BRICS nations that we've discussed before, which is all of them export the same things, and only one of them actually has a strong consumer base, which is India. All the rest, there's no consumers in their countries. So by definition, when BRICS gonna come up with a currency and replace the dollar immediately. So are you sure? Why? Nobody trusts each other, and nobody trusts the currency of the main economy. So do you think? I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying these levels of certainty that people talk about things. Really, I mean, I just like to ask the questions. Are you really sure about these things? Because you should be very, very careful. Now let's go to the markets, because some things have been happening which are quite important. I think the Fed's about to pivot any minute now, because the bond market is really showing levels of aggression. A lot of people are coming up with theories that the Chinese and the Russians are selling treasuries. Maybe they are. I think a lot of people selling treasuries to cover for the losses that they've been having, getting annihilated in these markets up and down, and they need to post collateral in whatever trades they're in. So in that context, usually treasuries and T-bills are quite the common collateral to have. So when you have these liquidation events, it's not so crazy that you have treasuries dumping. But yes, I think the level of aggressive negotiation of the US also is not helpful. Now we are in a bit of a mixed situation, because the dollar coming down is very positive for risk assets, because it alleviates financial conditions, but rising yields contracts or tightens financial conditions. So there's a little bit of a tug of war. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen. Are bonds starting to go up? Will bonds start to go up, or will the dollar start to go up? If the dollar starts to go up, that's not good, because dollar up, yields up, tightening financial conditions. If the dollar remains around these levels or even goes lower, but bonds go up, then that's good. That's loosening of financial conditions. At the moment, we have one of them is pushing down, the other one is pushing up. Oil prices are coming down, so I guess net liquidity is pouring in, and financial conditions are loosening because of the oil prices. But those can also reverse. Look, in my view, the Fed has showed its cards many times over the years, but there was one time in particular that, to me, it took any doubt that I had out. I want to take you back to March of 2023, as Silicon Valley Bank and other retail banks started to go bankrupt. And they were starting to have some contagion, some bank runs, etc. Inflation was 6% in March of 2023, and the Fed had basically sold $1 trillion between 2022 and 2023 as part of the tightening program. $1 trillion. In that month, to save the banking system and to backstop the bleeding, the Fed increased its balance sheet, meaning QE, for 1 month of 800 billion. So in a month, the Fed reversed 80% of its tightening between 2022 and 2023. In my view, and that's why I invest the way that I do, they just showed you that real black swans, real collapse of the system won't happen. You can have extreme volatility, you can have panic, all of that is possible, but if we start to touch the banking system, then they come in and sort it out. And you ask, why? Because the Federal Reserve is a central bank. It's not a central community good of the US. No, it's a central bank. So the number one concern they have is the banks. Very direct, very, very simple. With the bonds collapsing, obviously, at some point, the banks' big investment funds start to get impacted, which means the Fed, if this continues like this, maybe it resolves by itself and the Fed doesn't need to come. But if it doesn't, they will eventually come, because not coming is basically an entire collapse of the system. I think Trump is completely tired of Powell, and his slowness in this aspect is correct. Powell should already cut rates 2 months ago and the past month. Basically, all the data is disinflationary. And by the way, if your country is fighting some tariffs, it would be good that you could help instead of being an hindrance. And he's late again. He was late in 2020. He was late in 2018. He was late in 2020. He was late in 2021. And he was late in 2022. And now he's late in 2025. There's nothing special. Is more of the same. The only time he was not late was last year, September and October 2024, when he desperately tried to see if he could help his buddy win, which he couldn't. And sorry, the markets will, I think, in short order stabilize. We've had moves completely crazy. So it's not, the liquidity remains very thin because you have less and less players that are willing to put bids or asks in the market with levels like this. They don't want to get caught in these pockets of liquidity, so it's difficult. You need some time to create some structure in the market. I'm happy to see that crypto is, in any case, withstand quite well. Stocks sold off. Of course, stocks sold off. I mean, we had one of like 6 best days of all time in the stock market. So, I mean, it's not so surprising that we get there. I think we're going to get deals. I think there's going to be a deal between US and China. I think that one will take a little bit longer because it's more complex. So it should take a bit longer. But I think the timing of all this pushing, it doesn't come as a surprise. For example, Europe already made a huge concession when they announced we are willing to go 0 for 0 tariffs. Do you know when there was the last time that 0 for 0 happened between Europe and the US? You have to go back like 50 years. There's a reason you don't see American cars in Germany. It's not by accident. And if they are proposing 0 for 0, that means there were tariffs before. So they know exactly what they're doing. If you ask me, what's going to be the deal with the European Union? If you ask me, 0 for 0 tariffs. Regulation similar across countries, for example, meaning that American companies don't need to do special meaning American companies won't need to have special regulatory stuff when they go to Europe versus what the Europeans have when they go to the US, or something like that. I think that's going to be more minor, in my view. I think really remove tariffs, have Europeans make the US the number one energy source for Europe instead of Russia. That's my feeling. We'll see if I'm right. If I'm not, I mean, it's just my opinion. So I see something to that nature happening. So I'm quite curious to see. For the people that have been following this channel and that they've been asking me over the years, why do you always talk about the bond market? It's not because I invest in the bond market. The bond market is the big daddy. You see how crypto people say Bitcoin is the daddy and then the altcoins are, The bond market is the Bitcoin of the financial system. If that market starts to really struggle, and this is not something momentarily, then all the other markets, gold included, everything will have let me put it this way: tariffs will feel like a picnic if the bond market really cracks. I don't think it's gonna crack. Are you predicting it? No, I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying, check every time. The first thing that I check every single day when I look at the markets is how are yields and the bond market doing, because that the number one collateral for all the clearing houses, for most of all the futures trades, for all the commodities, is the number one collateral. That one will tell you exactly what's going to happen in a few days or weeks in the risk on assets. So it's the key. And yeah, I mean, now we play a little bit the waiting game. We need to see developments to occur, and then we need to judge based on what are exactly those developments. Playing this little game of, oh, what he did was magnificent or what he did was terrible, makes very little sense to me. So let's take just this thought experiment. He caved, he gave up, it was the bond market, the stock market, he had to give up. So he lost. So if he gets a good deal better than what he had, is that a loss? That's a little bit like me. Imagine if I go to my employer, yeah? And I say, I want $10 million. And my employer says, look, I cannot give you $10 million, but I can triple your salary. And I say, fine, I'll take it. Oh, what a big defeat. You only got triple your salary? You didn't get 10 million? What a loser. Say, what? Do you hear yourself? How stupid that sounds? But if I go to my boss and I say I want 10 million, they say, no, you're going to stay exactly the same, and I'm going to take a mental note that you're a complete idiot. Now I lost. See what I mean? The answer is, depends on the outcome of my conversation. Pure and simple. And then when people say, oh, you just paused the tariffs for the because the bond market was exploding, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so let's say me and you are negotiating. And I start with a very aggressive stance. And you show some goodwill towards me. At some point, I have to relax my initial stance. Otherwise, I'm just a raging bull in a china shop. You know, I'm just unreasonable. I'm just, crazy. So if I'm trying to negotiate with you, I am very aggressive in the beginning. You calm down, you breathe, you show goodwill, you try to do something with me to make me happier, in the sense of, stop being so upset with certain items of the current relationship, and we start talking about it. Of course, I have to kind of relax my position. I cannot just continue slapping you around. See what I mean? I don't know if these people actually don't think, or they've never been in a negotiation. Maybe I get the feeling never been in a negotiation before. But with that, guys, thank you very much for support. Don't forget, like and subscribe, and wait and see. We may be in very historical times, and you can tell one day to your children or grandchildren when you read this in the history books, hey, I was present and I was listening to a random masked guy in the internet. And with that, thank you very much for support. Drop the like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.